Welcome, players, to Is a Game. Is a Game podcast is a one-of-a-kind Q&A inspired by word association that invites you to get inside the minds of world-class creatives, entrepreneurs, and marketers worldwide. So I'm Izzy, your host, also known as Isabella Di Stefano. I've been in social storytelling and creative for over 13 years, launching campaigns you may have seen, like In Bed with My Calvins, Barbie Life in the Dream House, and Selfie by the Chainsmokers. I'm so nervous today because my dear friend and mentor, who I've known since I was 15, is here with us today, Atoosa Rubenstein, the creator, former editor-in-chief of 17 magazine, CosmoGirl, literal goddess. I'm freaking out.
I love you. That's so sweet. I'm freaking out too. My favorite model.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So I guess, do you want to tell our guests how we know each other?
So when I first became editor-in-chief of 17, one of the things I wanted to do was to bring real girls into the magazine, because I'd look on the streets of Manhattan and I'd see girls like you who are so stylish and beautiful and cool, and I just thought that would be a more relatable way to show fashion and beauty. And you were one of the people that we scouted. And you'll have to tell the scout story, because I don't know how they actually found you.
You don't know how I showed up?
I don't, but what I know and that they can attest to is you're my favorite. So whenever something didn't look good, I'd be like, well, put it on Izzy. Because they knew if they put it on Izzy, it would get approved.
Oh, thank you. Well, I actually have to tell you this story then, because when I was that age, 15 or 16, I was going to high school in New York City, and it was a final project. I was in an IB program, and normally for the final project, people would write an essay or some sort of like thesis on something. And, you know, those things at the time really didn't come naturally to me. And I decided that I wanted to throw a fashion show for charity for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. And I basically marched into my chancellor's office and I was like, listen, so for this final project, I'm going to produce a fashion show at Britney Spears' restaurant. And I'm going to get all these sponsors and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, okay. And like basically kept coming back to 17 magazine being like, will you please sponsor?
Oh, that's so funny.
My fashion show. And so I got a meeting at the 17 office. And when I came in,
do you remember who?
I think it was Gina.
Gina Kelly, yeah.
J'adore.
Yeah, love.
Obsessed. Yeah. And I came in to meet her. And then at the end of the meeting, they were like, hey, would you be like interested in doing real girl modeling? And I literally melted, and they took my Polaroid, and then we started shooting all the time.
That's incredible. Yeah. I love seeing those old pictures and pages in the magazine.
Oh.
People put it on their Instagram and their videos, TikTok videos, and I see you and I see Christine and Dara, and there was a whole crew of.
Well, Casey Lewis started Thank You Atoosa, which is, first of all, I'm obsessed with her Substack after school.
She's amazing.
And the Thank You Atoosa is just, it's like a nostalgia.
That's not the only place you're showing up, honey. You know, you're on a lot of other people's Instagram pages too.
Really?
Yeah, because the whole 17 nostalgia thing isn't just Casey. I mean, Casey is, to me, you know, the best at it, of course, because it's called Thank You Atoosa. But there's a lot of people who do it, and I see it all over on TikTok, and yeah.
So, tell me now. Obviously, like, we know you as the editor-in-chief of 17. I know you personally as many, many more things. But if you had to give yourself a title today, what would it be?
That's a really good question. You know, I've kind of been trying to shed all of that, you know, titles and boxes. And I guess you could say I'm a writer, because I write a Substack, Atoosa Unedited.
I love it. It's so raw and real and authentic.
And that's it. You know, it's like kind of a laboratory for me right now. It's not something that I'm looking necessarily to commercialize. I'm trying to find the space to normalize uncomfortable conversations, because I feel like as a society in general, what we're missing is connection. And I think that today, what seems to be happening to the world that I used to live in, content, right? That with social media, there's so much content out there. But what sometimes it's lacking is connection and depth, because it needs to be really quick and it needs to be jazzy and flashy and, all of those good things. And so I'm just kind of trying to see, I don't know, like, where can we find intimacy and connection? And it's definitely been a worthwhile journey.
I really relate to that because I feel very much the same. I'm the kind of person that if something makes me uncomfortable or in a friendship or a relationship, I'm going to say it, because I think that's what a real relationship is. You can communicate and be transparent. And sometimes that's having difficult conversations, right?
Yeah, and that's it. I think that to also, I was having a conversation with a writer the other day, because one of the things I'm working on is a book about my life from the earlier era that you discussed, 17 and CosmoGirl. And one thing she said was, she was like, I just don't know that people will can get behind a woman who cheats, like on her husband, that men can cheat and they can get away with it. And she was like, I don't think that kind of person is likable. And I would just say, I really disagree. I feel that anybody, if you really, really, really kind of open up to them and understand their story, you can see whether it's their trauma or whatever it is, their life experiences, you see how they might be doing the best that they can. And that best might be horrible, by other standards. But I think to really sort of open up and just make space for discomfort, I just think is very interesting.
And I think it invites or asks for people to have more compassion, which I think is so important. We're constantly comparing ourselves to each other. And first of all, that statement is so crazy to me, because for me, what's most compelling is someone who's honest and true. No one is perfect.
It felt like a very old-fashioned thing to say. And to your point about the compassion and comparing, it's about really having compassion for yourself. And feeling that even your ugliest story or your most uncomfortable story is both worth sharing and doesn't devalue you. It's just, I have no shame about anything I've gone through. And so I really just try to keep putting it out there so that other people can also look at their own lives and choices with more compassion.
I love your Substack so much. It feels like I'm listening to your diary entry and I'm inside your mind a little bit, which I'm going to try and do today with you.
So fun. Let me get that.
Cheers to that. We're spritzing. Yes, we spritz. So basically, came up with a list of words inspired by what's happening and you, and basically I'm going to say a word. You're going to pick one of these cute little cards. And then I just want to know the first thing that pops into your head, and it can be totally random. Okay. That's the beauty of this. So are you ready to play Is a Game?
I was born ready, girl.
Okay, here we go. Pick your first card.
I feel like I'm going to get a tarot card reading.
Just point at it.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Mentor.
Oh, Kathy Black.
Tell me about Kathy Black.
Yeah. Kathy Black was the president of Hearst Magazines, and she is the person who gave me CosmoGirl. That was an incredible opportunity. Today, 26-year-olds are doing a lot of big things in the world. Back then, that was kind of unheard of. And the fact that she trusted me with a very big brand. Now, CosmoGirl was a new brand, right? It was one that I created. But it was, an offshoot of Cosmopolitan, which was their biggest brand. And she's just such a fucking baller, She just took a shot. And it's so funny because years later, when I said that to her, I was like, that was such a baller move. You gave me, I'd never had any experience as an editor-in-chief. I'd only been a fashion editor, just constantly sort of going to London and Milan and, the shows. That's all I did was pick clothes. And she gave me an entire magazine to run. And I said, tell me about that decision. And she was just like, well, I just would have replaced you if it didn't work out. I was like, I didn't think about that. It didn't even occur to me that she would get rid of me. But she just was always like, I remember once when, there are editors who are just solid good editors. They go to a magazine and they get it done. And that's kind of never been my thing. I'm much more of a, let's create something new and do something that hasn't been done before. And I remember when I was at 17, I had this moment where, I'm a survivor of incest. And I've often thought about, if I had more sort of knowledge about my body, would I have had more agency when this was happening to me to say no, or to even say what was happening to me, to use the right terms? And I realized at that point, even though I was like in my early 30s, maybe I was about 30, 31, I just didn't even understand the anatomy of the vagina that well, And so I wanted to do a story called Vagina 101 for our readers. And it was really meant to empower them. And I wanted to run pictures of vaginas. Now, I didn't know no one had done that before. I just knew I hadn't seen it, and I wanted it.
Yeah.
And that sounds great. And I wanted it. But I just wanted girls, because with boys, they look down and they see their junk. With girls, you can't unless you take a mirror, and that could be...
And actually investigate.
Yeah. And feel and touch and put your hand... And so I knew I wasn't a girl who did that. That was outside of my comfort zone. So I assumed maybe there were other girls who felt that way. So we did it. And we ran medical pictures of vaginas and vulvas and, yada, yada, yada. And it made a big stink. So it got pulled off the stands at Walmart, at Albertsons. And Kathy Black called them and totally, was in support of me. My publisher at the time was a wonderful woman, but she was she was mad. She was so pissed. I remember I came into the office and she said, well, my 15-year-old said, whoever made that choice should be fired. Yeah, I was just like, well, your fucking 15-year-old needs to go back to class and
step it. Yeah.
But Kathy called the different people and was just like, I totally stand behind my editor's decision. And she did at the end say to me as a wrap-up, just let me know in advance next time you're going to do that kind of thing, because I had a lot of autonomy. And again, that goes back to what a baller she was. I never had to show the magazine to anybody before it went to press. So if I'm going to do a big vagina extravaganza, they're not going to find out until Walmart is like, what's going on? So she just was somebody with so much courage and
trust. She really trusted you.
Yeah, she did. She really did.
And that's what empowerment looks like too, as a boss. And I didn't always feel that in my jobs.
I have always had that. And I've been so lucky. And, at a certain point in my career, the Atoosa brand had gotten very big. And I remember thinking, like, when I left Hearst, I had an agent at CAA and, all these incredible opportunities. And I would never move forward with any of them for like a year. VH1 wanted to do a reality show on my next steps, like so many book deals, and I wouldn't move forward. And I realized I wouldn't move forward because nobody else was like her. Nobody was as smart as she was, as brave as she was. I didn't feel comfortable with any other partner. And that's something I'm going to have to get over, because she is a one-of-a-kind baller of all ballers. But I find it hard, actually, to even do anything big without her. She's so meaningful to me. And when I left Hearst, I left in a way, very impulsive. I just felt done and I wanted to get out. And I regret. That's like the only thing in my life I regret, is that woman had my back in such a big way. She changed my life. And when I was done, I was just like, peace out, motherfuckers. And I just left. And, it was really not respectful to her how I did it. And I think it was a manifestation of how much I was going through behind the scenes, that I wasn't even thinking about her. I was just thinking about like sort of getting the oxygen mask on myself.
You were at a point of desperation.
I just had to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And now with time and distance, I look back and I think that wasn't not great. That's
But
really
what
the
would you
only
have done
regret I have.
differently? Like, how would you have done it differently?
You know, they wanted to be in business, like they wanted to be investors in whatever I do next. I wouldn't have stayed for any of the opportunities to stay. So I still definitely would have left, but maybe I would have given them more time. Maybe I would have. They wanted to be partners in whatever I do next financially. And I just kind of wasn't listening to anything. I surrounded myself with these kind of big, powerful LA men. I was a little untouchable. And I just was done. You know, it was just like a bad breakup. You know, like if you've had like a real deep relationship with somebody and they kind of like break up with you over text, or they're just like, it's not you, it's me, peace.
Or the post-it.
Yeah. And then they're like suddenly in bed with somebody else. You're like, so yeah, I could have done the whole thing with more integrity for what our relationship was. And that's really, I would say, the only regret I have in my life.
So how do you think about it a lot?
No, I don't think about anything a lot because, as you know, I'm a meditator.
I know.
We can talk about that. But I don't ruminate on it. No, I've said my piece to her.
Okay.
And I've made that peace with myself. I was doing the best that I could. I was, in some ways, in a very sort of traumatized moment. And I felt it wasn't true, but I was in fight or flight. You know, I felt almost like my life depended on getting out.
But also maybe you were right, like mental health wise, right? Like you could have.
I did the best I could.
Right.
And that's what my best looked like. Clearly, I've changed and shifted and evolved and grown since then. So now I look back at it and I'm a little like, oh, I'm so sorry. But you know that famous quote, when you know better, you do better. And
Absolutely.
And that's it. And that's all I could do.
So I have another question for you going back before we go to the next word, going back to the beginning of what you said about being an editor and being given all this responsibility suddenly. So when that happens, like, what's your first day on a job like that? Because you have no idea what you're doing, right? So to a degree. So like, what was that even like? Where did you start?
Well, and you know, it's the start, it's a slow start. Like you have to hire people. And there's a funny story about, the editor of Cosmo told me, oh, you need to get a features person, a words person. And she had told me that there were grown-ups like almost my age today, I'm 50, at Cosmo that were very senior in the magazine that felt overlooked for this job. They were kind of pissed. They thought they were next if there was an editor-in-chief job within the company. And so she said, I think it would, get you good favor if you go to these women and ask them for their guidance, and maybe they know somebody they would recommend to be your deputy editor or whatever. And so I sent them a very nice email, and this is in the early days of email, very early. I rarely used email, actually. At that point, I still used a typewriter, personally. Wow. Yeah, I preferred a typewriter.
Wow.
I didn't start using email until I became an editor-in-chief of CosmoGirl. And so I sent them a very nice email, and one of them wrote back, looks like the fashion girl needs a grammarian. And she sent it to me, like reply all, instead of, she meant to forward it to the other one. And then that same woman, she ended up being an editor-in-chief of a magazine too, bolted into my office. And she's like, I just sent you an email, and you don't need to read it. It was a mistake. It was meant for blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And I didn't even feel the need to say anything. I just felt like I was laughing.
People are so judgy. Oh my God.
I didn't give a shit because, for whatever reason, I don't get bent out of shape about that stuff. I know my worth in that way. And to me, when you're a fashion person within magazines, fashion department is its own it's like its own colony. It's its own country within a bigger. And so I always thought those people were so nerdy. It's like awful to say. It's
No, but
unkind.
true.
But that's just, I was just like, okay, old lady, fashion girl needs a grammarian. You know, like,
oh,
you really got me.
you got with her.
So it didn't really matter to me, but it was funny. But so, yeah, it was rough. I would just like, I tried to hire people the best I could. Many of those hires were excellent hires. But I remember this was funny. So the managing editor is the person who kind of keeps everything on track, everything, budget, the magazine going to the press, all of it. And that was the person that was always like on my back about my cell phone bill when I was a fashion editor. So like, I was like, I have my own magazine. Like, we don't need one of those.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to have one of those annoying people.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We would be at the office for like 48 hours. I mean, we'd not go home. It was so crazy. And then at one point, I called the guy who was the managing editor of Cosmo, this wonderful guy called Lavinel Savu, he was doing that at InStyle and just went to run, I think he's running Yahoo Fashion now.
Oh, wow.
And I called him, I was like, something's not right. And he came and he was like, it was like a scene out of a sitcom. He was like, all right, girls. And he just like got us organized. And I was like, forever.
Why? Because you were like in expense hell or something?
No, we had no infrastructure, no systems for how to get the ideas into the layouts and then into like just the whole process. Like there's like an entire
and workflow of it all.
There was no workflow, none. I mean, we were just like, I don't know what we were doing.
Do not underestimate the power of someone who
the organized
manages,
person
and who was organized, which is not me, definitely not me.
It was so funny. So then, little by little, that was the hardest piece for us to get down, finding the right managing editor, because I was a different kind of editor in that, like, again, I wasn't trying to create a magazine. I was trying to change these girls' lives. And not change, help, save. Like, I was so mission oriented. And if anything it was also like a spoken magazine. So everything had to be in this one voice, which was my voice. And so if anybody made a change after I saw it, and it threw the pentameter like off, I was like, oh, no. I didn't care if it was a caption. We have to go through the whole process again. And so that was very frustrating to people. To managing editors. And then, eventually, we found the right one. It was actually a woman who I was an intern for. She was a managing editor when I was in college.
Wow.
And she became our managing editor. And I think things from there really started to right size. But
it's amazing to find the right team and the right balance and people who know how to work with you and like get the best out of you, because that's what they're there for, essentially.
The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that I had I don't know why, I didn't like, my therapist said I had like a touch of agoraphobia because of all of the stress of the magazine. I was not like this when I was a fashion editor. And I remember telling everybody, like, don't come into my office. Don't call me. Like, basically, only email me. And, like, I needed to create, like, a buffer zone around myself.
A bubble.
Yeah. In different ways that existed throughout my time there.
But I think that's smart, no? To have a boundary.
I knew what I needed to be comfortable. That shifted the don't come into my office or that was just at the beginning because I felt so much overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
And I needed to, like, limit it. But later what it looked like, and we can talk about it because it gets to why I was a little late for you today, but I would create opportunities for rest for myself. Like, there was maybe a year where 2 hours a day was completely blocked off so I could, like, take a nap in my office.
I love that.
And then it shifted. That was a CosmoGirl. And then at 17, I would start in the office at 2 so that I could both rest and do my work really, really in a quiet environment without any distractions. I would always shift my day. And so today, I wanted to take a nap. And so, like, I kind of take a nap every day. It's a part of my
Yeah.
I did it when I was working at the highest level, like when I was the busiest I could ever be. And I continue to do it now. I might cancel. I wouldn't have canceled this to take the nap, but I was a little bit late. But would cancel an appointment to take a
To
nap.
take a nap.
But I usually try to structure my days so that I can take a nap. And ultimately, like, I'm just on this earth to be happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that includes taking a nap.
Well, but also I think it touches on something that's so important, because I think there is a misconception that the people at the tippy top wake up at 4 a.m. and do their little workout and then go to and they're on their emails and they go into the office and that like everything is, which, yes, it's very busy, but you don't necessarily do standard not 9 to 5, obviously.
Yeah,
but it's whatever gets the best out of you, right? And it made me think about when I was working at Mattel, the CEO at the time gave us a speech. And Mattel was a place where I had to get there at 8 a.m. and the day ended at 5. But for the social media team, it never ended at 5. But for everyone else, it was 8 to 5, like very structured. And he gives this talk and he's like, I think the future, and I think he was a new CEO at the time, I think the future of work is in bursts, not 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. Yeah. And that he's like, for example, I, in the morning, will get up at 4 and work for 3 hours when I have this solitude. Then I take my kids to school, hang out with my wife for an hour or whatever. Then I have a coffee. And then I do another burst of work. Then I might leave the office at 2 p.m. to go to my son's soccer practice. And then at 8 p.m., I'll do another burst of work. So long story short, my point is that that's not what you learn as a kid or growing up. It's more like, well, to be successful, you have this very structured job, but I don't think that's how you get the best out of it.
I think particularly in creative roles, because I think that, and I think rest is so important, because you can't be creative if you're stressed, or, like the best ideas are kind of channeled. And you can't be a channel if you're jammed up.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's interesting balance, right? Because you're trying to balance the business and the creativity. Okay, on to the next word. Trend.
It was the first thing that came to mind for me is for whatever reason, is MAC Cosmetics.
Really? Tell me about that.
I think the reason that came up is because there was a guy, and you probably know him, John Dempsey, who worked for many years until recently at Estee Lauder, and he ran MAC for a long time, and then, had went up and up and up and up. And I thought about him because I remember, it's a funny story, actually. One day I was working in the office. It was probably CosmoGirl. Maybe it was Cut 17. And like my hair was like up in this like crazy bun. And I was like editing, like working, looking at film. And all of a sudden I realized, oh shit, I have to go to meet Dempsey for a meeting with my publisher. And I just like left and I showed up and he was like, oh, I love this look. It's so sculptural. And I was like, what is he talking about? And then I was like, oh my God, my hair still looks like this crazy beehive on my head. And what I love about him is it's what I kind of, I want to put my finger on it. It's like, he has such an open heart. Yeah, like he has such an open heart and an open mind that he can see vision and beauty and coolness like everywhere he looks. And that is one of the reasons I respect him so much. But I think that idea of, a lot of times I think people are trying very hard to either make a trend or to be a part of a trend. But to me, trends come out of almost like we talked about before, like being a channel, like being really open to just seeing something remarkable where other people might not see anything, and then pulling that out. But I find him to be one of the most visionary people when it comes to trend. And MAC Cosmetics, of course, for me in my childhood, being in college, like there was Russian red lipstick. Like the MAC Cosmetics of that era was so, I thought, so trendy and cool.
So MAC, yeah, I mean, iconic. Whenever I think of MAC, I think of color. MAC is like very rich and pigmented.
The truth is, the very first thing I thought of when you said trend, now we're going to get back to me being a liar.
Real talk.
The real talk is I thought blue eyeliner, but the blue eyeliner was like the heavy pigment cyan
J'adore.
from MAC.
J'adore.
So then I just kind of broadened it to say MAC and John, because I do all of that is true.
Oh my God, I love. Why do you feel like that blue eyeliner is having a moment right now?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a trend. That's why I dialed it back. But that is where my head went.
Did you participate in the blue eyeliner trend?
I currently participate. I didn't for you today. Today I wore lipstick for you.
I
which
see
is,
that.
By the way, it's the third time in 1 year I've worn lipstick. I'm not a lipstick wearer.
I feel really special.
Yeah. I don't know. Am I putting on a costume? We were gonna have to psychoanalyze that. But I've only worn lipstick 3 times. I don't really wear lipstick, but I almost always wear blue eyeliner.
I love blue eyeliner. I also love blue mascara.
Oh.
I think it's really underrated.
Okay. I'll
like
get some.
a bright blue.
Do you
I
have
think
a favorite brand?
Dior.
Okay, I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
It's really, 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 really good. And they have purple too, but the blue is like, yes.
Okay, done.
It's super on
I'll
point.
get it.
Okay, pick another word.
Bam.
Gossip.
Well, of course, I'm gonna have to say Gossip Girl, and because I have a funny story about it.
Oh, tell me.
So obviously, I was at the magazines when Gossip Girl was out, but I never watched it then. I never actually watched it.
You didn't?
I didn't watch any TV when I was working. How I went with the choices that I went with, whether it was somebody on the cover or who we were going to cover, and inside the magazine, obviously, in addition to, we had a wonderful entertainment editor, Carissa Rosenberg. I don't know if you ever met her. Just really brilliant and on point. But for me, like, it was always like I would listen to something inside me, and I didn't want to be the only thing I did watch. I watched one thing, High School Musical 1. I did watch that. I'll never forget
Why?
it. I'm not sure, but boy, did I love it. I was like, this is magnificent. It hadn't come out yet. I was like, this is it. And we put Sharpay on the cover. But separately, maybe it was, I don't know, almost a decade ago, I was in an elevator at the 92nd Street Y. And there's this woman in the elevator with me, and she looked so familiar. And I was like, oh my God, did you go to Barnard College? No. Do you live on the Upper West Side? No. Do you work in media? No.
How do we know each other?
Yeah, I was just like, oh God, it's so weird. I just know you. And she was like, I was on Gossip Girl. And I was so embarrassed.
who was it?
Nate Archibald's mom. And so when I left 17, I watched Sex and the City, the whole thing. I watched Gossip Girl, the whole thing. Entourage, I like dove into everything that had been very famous that I'd never seen. And Gossip Girl was one of it. So in that moment, I simultaneously outed myself as a 40-something-year-old woman who watches Gossip Girl.
There is nothing wrong with that.
It's a little old for that.
Little
but
escape.
It's a little embarrassing. But
What
yeah.
was your favorite out of those shows?
I mean, I really enjoyed them all. I mean, I think I only watched those 3, and I don't have a favorite because I don't really get to. I'm not a big TV person.
I'm not either.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre, but I'm just not.
I think they were a part of my deprogramming, like of just almost becoming normal, not thinking about like what's next or how are we going to do this or all of the kind of ways of thinking about career and advancement. So just like sitting down every night and watching a show was so different. It was a real reverse stretch to where I had been.
Okay, next word. Event.
Well, Well, I was thinking about the event I went to last night, which was a benefit for the Rima Hort Foundation. And a man, his name is Paul Kane. I think he used to run People magazine, but when I was at the magazines, he ran Teen People, I think. And now he's like a CEO of a big kind of events company, 58 years old. And he was like, I love your Substack. And he was just like, it really hits me in different places. And that was really touching to me to hear it from a 58-year-old man. And I do have a lot of male readers because I think that they don't have the space in their lives for complex feelings because they are kind of relied upon to provide and to be really stable and to be the dad, and I think this is a place where their complexity, they can sort of explore their own complexity.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So did you end up talking to him more about
it's
what
somebody,
was resonating with him?
I think like everybody, we have this kind of stamp that we put out in the world of like, this is our most perfect version of ourselves. And we kind of stamp that over and over again in every meeting. And we're just like, say whatever we feel will make the situation more easeful and smooth. And then there's real life, and real life is filled with sometimes tragedy and sometimes always complexity. And, without sort of betraying anything in his life.
No, of course.
Yeah, I think his life, like yours and like mine and everybody listening here, has complexity and has had complexity. And we can have friends, and that's kind of like what I was saying to you the other day. Like, what I hate about going to events is like that I have to sit next to two people, one on each side, and have some bullshit conversation. Yeah. And I'm like done with bullshit conversation. I just am. Like, I'm the mother at drop off and pick up. I don't want where my kids go to school to dictate who the fuck my friends are. Yeah. Like, that's not my friends. Yeah. My friends are this particular subset of people, and that's really who I connect with and communicate with intimately. And so it was really nice I met a woman who was your age, gorgeous girl in the art world. And because I finally sat down at a table and I was just like, I'm so sick of this bullshit. And I sat by myself and this girl came and sat next to me and she was stunning. And she's on Raya, like I am, the dating app. Mm-hmm. And she was just like, yeah, I can't find a great guy. And we went right into it. And by the end of that conversation, I was just like, I was like, well, I think that there's these ancestral woundings on the female side of your family. And, it's your job to work through. And she's like, yes, it is. And we were able to really talk about life and me not just being like, oh, well, she's a beautiful 30, 1-year-old girl. Me putting her in a box of what her life might be like, or her putting me in a box of what, my life might be like as a 50-year-old divorcing woman. And we really connected. And so I guess it's making me change how I feel about events in that I don't have to show up and play the role that I have played in the past at events. I can just be me. And that was really refreshing. Would I have rather not gone to the event if let's say my friend wasn't being honored? I would have preferred not to go to the event.
Even after that conversation?
Yeah, because it was great. I went to support my friend and I was able to have what I felt was real conversations while I was there. But I would have rather, had I stayed home, I would have been with my daughter and we have very real conversations. I would have done a lot of self-care. I would have had my long bath that I take every day. I would have had my Theragun and really worked my hips.
I love the Theragun. Those are great.
Theragun session.
Yes.
I would have just done nice, juicy things for myself.
More relaxing.
And it's not even just relaxing, because I am relaxed. It's just nourishing and just caring, loving things for me.
So what happens when someone tries to have a bullshit conversation with you? What's your reaction?
I just don't. I mean, I make it at school. Like now, I'm very clear. Don't talk to me. I remember once someone asked me to be like, I don't know. I mean, makes me sound crazy, but whatever. Like they asked me to be on something. Like I don't remember. It was some bullshit quiz night. I don't know. Will you be on my team for quiz night? And I just was like, yeah, no.
No.
I don't do that. Like I'll be very clear. I'll say like, no, I just don't do things like that.
So
Like,
how does
I'm here for my kids to go to school.
how does one get comfortable with saying no? Because I think that's really hard for some people. I mean, myself included.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more time you spend with yourself, the more time, like, think about if you had a kid, like, think about your dog, think about Romy, right? Like, if somebody wants to do something that you think Romy would not be comfortable with, you'd be like,
No.
It's off Romy.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
hell yeah,
Romy doesn't
don't you
like
dare.
being held that way.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But we don't do that for ourselves. And it's because we don't make enough time to just love ourselves, whether it's the nap or the Theragun session or the bath, or all I do is just create more opportunities for me to like really bond with myself. And so then when there is an imposition that might not be comfortable, I can say no. And even like last night, like my friend knew for me to go to an event, it's not even that I feel awkward or I just would rather be in my living room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Rather be at home.
With my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like my best friend was supposed to go with me and he weirdly got double pink eye and couldn't go.
Oh, dear.
It's so weird, I know.
Dear.
Little cooties. But, I'm okay going outside my comfort zone when it's something that I think is good for me. But like a lot of times we put ourselves outside our comfort zone for things that are really not necessary.
I definitely do that. Yeah. So you're sounding very Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Yeah.
I've always kind of been that way. Like when I was an editor, like I felt very connected to the millennials. And I don't know why that is, but
I love it. I mean, do you think there's also, because there are a lot of, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but there are a lot of millennials that complain about the way Gen Z is at work with like creating, I have boundaries. And like, which was the opposite of the way the workplace was for millennials, at least in my experience. It was like, there are no boundaries. Do you think there is like a flip side of that?
I mean, listen, I think everything in life is a balance. It's funny you should say that you guys think of that for the Gen Z. Everybody thought that about you guys. That
Really?
You were like just awful to work with. I never was a part of that conversation, but oh my gosh, yeah. Like people,
Really?
oh my God, they thought millennials had no work ethic and so lazy. And yeah, Gen Z was like horrified by you. Gen X was horrified by you. No, I think with every generation, we're becoming more self-aware and we are building boundaries. And I don't know. I mean, I can imagine where it's annoying. Anytime I'm annoyed is an opportunity for self-reflection. And that's partially why I don't really get too annoyed with other people. Like if something is annoying, I know.
You're like, what's going on here?
Yeah. It's just that every single person is just a mirror. It's just a reflection on me. And so to me, I look at life in general as like a virtual reality game, And when something jams me up, it's a great opportunity to sort of look inward. And I feel the creativity and productivity comes, I prefer for it to be birthed from love and self-care as opposed to fear, which is what was my fuel before. And, history will tell us whether this was a good and productive shift or if it was not, and that their boundaries and their interest in lifestyle was somehow deleterious to forward movement. I don't know, but I think it's good, and I think whatever we can do to shift toward mental health,
Yes.
I think would be really good.
And just create more conversation around that to begin with. creating more awareness, conversation, compassion as it relates to mental health.
Yeah, and I think we're also on the verge of just something really, really new and different. And I think that these changes that we're talking about are going to fuel that new era. But I think in many ways, when I look at culture and the worlds that I was very, very active in when I was working at the magazines, like fashion, beauty, there's really no innovation. There was a time where there were real trends, Now every trend is just a regurgitation of an old trend. Like there isn't an industry other than technology that culturally I'm like, wow, this is so exciting.
What about the metaverse?
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. I mean, it's not a thing yet, but that's what I'm talking about is like in technology, I think that there are interesting things happening, but in culture, I don't know. I'm not particularly impressed. So I feel like there is something around the corner. I think it's going to be driven by the kinds of shifts that you're talking about. Maybe it's metaverse related, but I think that there will be a bigger shift. We're just in the process of it right now.
I agree with that. Like something's coming around the corner, like the dark horse in the night, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the metaverse represents the future of storytelling. And I'm really interested in starting to create more content and experiences in that space because I do believe in it. But it lacks some of that connection that you are speaking to today. And I think people are really looking for that. So I'm interested and curious to see what comes next.
Yeah, I think I think that kind of blending is what I'm talking about. Is like, how do we take what we right now know as the metaverse that isn't necessarily, I mean, it's not like
it's not as social.
It's not there
right?
yet. Yeah, it's just not there yet. It's like, how do we take that and bring connectivity to it? Like when I'm thinking about the books that I'm working on down the road, metaverse is like a part of it for sure. But what is that going to look like, TBD?
TBD. We'll see. I'm excited.
Okay.
I'm very into avatars.
You are, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I feel like we're all avatars. Like I feel like people in our lives in general, in real life, I look at life as that kind of virtual reality where you're an avatar for this and you're an avatar for my mother, and how do we sort of navigate gracefully through this video game? So it's funny that your podcast is like a game, and you say you love avatars. I feel that is life. That's how I navigate life.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because that's how I try to explain social media to people where they're like, I don't get it. Like still to this day, I don't really understand it. And I'm like, no, it's just life online, like in a digital space. So like the same way that you bring people together, IRL, that same concept, just translate it to this language within Instagram or within TikTok. And I think it's like a simulation of life, essentially.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I'm more focused on the simulation of life. Like I think of life as a simulation. I find social media. I mean, I don't get too involved with it, but I don't want to say I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it. I don't get yet how I live on social media. Oh, that's part of the exploration.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, first of all, I don't think anyone ever at any time totally gets what they are on social media because it's out of your control too.
No, but like I see, like the thing about social media that makes me kind of crazy from my perspective, meaning like an older person from like traditional media, is like the people, not all, many of the people that are huge on social media, what they're doing is so insignificant.
Oh, yeah.
And like my caregiver, who is not an insignificant person, by the way, she is like so smart and talented. She's a performer. But like she'll make some like dumbass video of just like with literally just like her, and she'll like show her outfit and it'll get like 1.2 million views. There's literally nothing to it.
There's
not
something
sexualized
yeah.
So it's just like, how is that getting 1.2 million views? I don't judge it. Like, I want to understand it. Like, there's like a secret code in it.
No, maybe because it's so normal.
But there's a lot of also normal shit that doesn't do well. Listen, if it were that important to me, instead of like taking a nap, I tried to figure it out. But that is like, that code is very interesting to me and like very perplexing.
Yeah.
It could be generational. Like, I remember walking in at CosmoGirl. It was very clear to me what CosmoGirl needed to be, what 17 needed to be. And, whether it was making the reality show or this or that, it was just like very second nature. To me, social media is not second nature. Like, I'll make a series of videos. Like last week, I wanted to make a video a day just to see, like, just to play.
Yeah.
And then one video just like fucking totally popped. And it's like, okay, why not? I don't see it.
Really?
I don't see it in my own. Forget about my own. I like to look at people who are much, more prolific and bigger than me on social media. And I don't get why certain videos are bigger than others. And I don't get too caught up in it, because it's just, to me, that says that's just not my area. I need to just continue to do like inner exploration, and somehow bring that work, give birth to that work. Like, that's going to be my body of work. I don't think I'm necessarily destined to be a social media queen.
But I think it's so funny to hear you say that, because you're so naturally good at it.
I'm good at being myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Like, whether I'm talking to you or I'm on a video or whatever I'm doing, like, I'm just good at being me. But me, I don't know, like, I couldn't ever make a video. I don't know those videos that do really big. Like, I watch them, but it just doesn't. I don't get it.
It doesn't resonate with you.
I just wouldn't even know how to do that. Like, they seem so simple and not thought out. And I'm used to being much more thoughtful in the content that I create. So I just don't know how to do that. It's so easeful. It seems very easy to the people who do it. Maybe it's not easy, but it looks effortless, but I don't know how to do that.
I know what you mean. It does look, and a lot of the content that is performing the best on TikTok is like very off the cuff.
Yeah.
And then it starts trending and you're like, why?
It's not even off the cuff. It's like nothing. It's like literally just a picture of a video of a girl being like, and whatever the words are.
Yeah.
Think POV, thinking of blah, 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 blah. And it's the right song. And it's just a slice of something that resonates. I don't know.
Does that mean we're like all stupid? Because we like fall for
I
it?
think we use it. We're using it as an anesthetic right now, as anesthesia, because I think we are living in hard times. And that's why what you said about mental health and, the work that I'm trying to do with making us comfortable with discomfort, like, perhaps the more we get comfortable with what's actually happening in our lives, the less we want to look at just a video of a girl doing this in a particular outfit that could look like any other outfit just to a song. To me, that just looks like pirate's booty. I don't mean it in a judgy way. People love it. But how do we shift from eating so much pirate's booty to sushi,
And what does sushi look like?
That's what I think we're trying to figure out. That's the next big thing. It's like, what is the next sushi? I think, the traditional media companies like the one that I worked for, it kind of was their birthright in a way to figure this world out. And they really dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. They did not do a good job of it at all. So now they're just content farmers, right? And branded content, which is what it is.
Yeah.
And so they've let these young, enterprising people, really make social media their own, which I think is wonderful. I really don't shit on that. I think it's wonderful. I do think it's pirate's booty, though. And what does the sushi look like? I think that's the TBD. But I hope that we can get to a place, like there was a time when Oprah Winfrey, when she would do content, it was really meaningful, and I think it really helped people in their lives. I think what we did at some of the different magazines really helped people in their lives. That isn't quite happening.
Well, I think when you say it like that, I mean, first of all, everything is very baby, right? And there are so many voices now. I mean, back in the day, I wasn't empowered to like say anything about anything
Right.
unless like I was in 17 magazine being interviewed, like a Q&A or whatever. It might have been via that story, but outside of that, I didn't have any like accessible tools to like really share my piece.
Well, and also, I don't think you felt empowered to.
Yeah.
So today, both people are empowered by the technology that they have that they can use, and they just feel more empowered in general.
But it's made it very, very crowded. So then everyone has to be very baity to compete for the attention.
And the baity isn't meat, right? Like
no, it doesn't mean
baity
anything.
is cupcakes and pirate's booty. You know what I mean? And sushi or a real meal, someone has to want to sit down for that. And I don't know what that's going to look like. But I guess I believe in my way. The thing I'm really investigating right now, just in terms of my own life and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, whether it's the napping or the Theragunning my ass all the time, is I think that there's a freedom. There is a possibility to really feel freedom and peace and joy.
Okay, so I have some rapid fire questions for you to end this game. Yeah. What is your superpower?
Connection, honesty, and connection.
Close your eyes. Mm-hmm. Imagine you are 20 again. What do you see? Great
breasts and body.
Okay, you can open your eyes now. Amazing. Okay, so what do I need to know about getting older as a woman?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's actually the best. It really is the best. I don't feel bad about the body piece because when I was young, it wasn't like I was in a Little House on the Prairie outfit. Like I really flaunted my body, and that's the beauty of being young, is being young and the beauty that comes from being young and just all of that. And I really did enjoy that when I had it. But there's so much depth and wisdom and growth. I love getting older. And
do you believe in Botox?
Yeah, I do Botox. Yeah. Okay. In fact, I'm seeing Dr. Frank next week on Friday.
I need to go. Like, I apologize to all of you for my forehead on this episode.
No. I didn't start doing that until like my 40s.
Okay.
And I did Botox and fillers. And I always go, and he shames me because he says, only 28-year-olds get what you get. And like, for me, like I want to be able to have expression. And so I do very, very, very little, but I don't want to do, I like
you look amazing.
Thank you. I like what I do, and it's all good for me. But yes, so I do Dr. Paul Frank is the best in Manhattan.
Oh, I'm gonna be calling him after this session. So who are your mentors today?
My mentors today. I mean, I really feel, this is like so crazy, but like I just feel very connected more to like spirit, to God, to just like really being like just an open channel for the universe's wisdom to kind of, flow through me. I don't really look at any person and think I wish I was like them or I want to do what they do. Yeah, not at all. So
who's the first person you go to for advice?
I mean, what kind of advice? I mean, I don't go
life advice, like life.
Yeah, no, I feel like I feel that these are really puzzles we must solve for ourselves. And so I have a lot of different people whose modalities are very useful to me, whether it's like a meditation teacher or, somebody like that, or certainly a therapist. But I have my two best friends, Dave and Karen, are both really important to me. And like when my sister the other day sent me a text that said, ironically, because this is very true of her, you're addicted to being a victim. And I've never identified as a victim. Like I immediately reached out to David and I was like, we need to have some real talk. Do you see the validity in that? And he's a chaplain,
wow.
Yeah, so he works with end-of-life patients, and Karen is a therapist. And, I was able to really talk about it and, like, what happened triggered me. Like, we get it really deep into it. But those are the two people I would say I call in addition to any, like, healing people, like energy people.
What advice do you have for a young professional? I mean, they could just be graduating college or early on in their career.
I would just say to just listen to your own wisdom. Like, you are perfect. Everything you need is sort of self-contained. And so if you follow your own heart, you follow your own voice, like, it will lead you down the right path. That's it. And all I ever tell people is just be helpful, be kind, be thoughtful, be a good person out in the world and follow your own voice, and you're going to do great.
Would you say the same thing in terms of advice for someone perhaps who's more seasoned in their career but is going through a transition? They're at a fork in the road.
Yeah, that's it. I think we get in our own head about things that maybe other people are doing, and we look outside of ourselves. And the one thing I've learned is everything is inside. And the only thing that's important is to just, like, be a good person and be helpful and thoughtful and kind out in the world. That's the outer piece that I think is important, to just be a good member of your community. And I always help people. Like, if anybody wants my help, and I know you're like that, you've helped me hugely, and that has value. You know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah.
And, like, I'll never forget what you did for me that day when my little TED Talk came out and I didn't know how to put it on social media. I'll never forget that, Izzy.
Of course. I would
You know what I mean? And if
anything.
I'm ever in a position to help you,
No,
I'll
you
do it in
being
an
here
instant. But you didn't do it for that reason. You just did it because that's how you operate. But everybody should operate that way. I operate that way. I have, like, friends I've connected with, things that have really changed their lives. And I didn't do it because I wanted to get anything out of it. I did it because I want to be like, in community with them.
Yeah, I mean, that really resonates with me, and it makes me think about what you were saying at the beginning of this talk about doing your best also, and knowing that doing your best is not going to look like the best that someone else does, and that's okay.
Yeah. And also, like, not everything is going to turn out the way you want it to. Like, you might have an idea, like, oh, I want to do this podcast, just hypothetically. Or I'll make it about me. I wanted to have a show on MTV. And I had a thought that it would be like the Osbournes or the Newlyweds, because that's the team we worked with. But the world was changing, and our show wasn't like that big, ginormous hit on MTV. But at the same time, it brought us a tremendous amount of revenue. It helped me in ways I can't even calculate. And more importantly, it put me in relationship with some people that are still very important to me in my life. And so that was not a failure. You know what I mean?
No, you gained.
But I think sometimes we think, like, if it's not this thing we have in our mind of what
it could be.
Yeah, but it still has tremendous value. And so I would just say to people, don't be afraid to take chances. Like, just go for it. It might not give you what you think it's going to give you, but if you're following your own gut and your instinct, it's going to give you something important.
That's exactly what I'm doing here.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't really know what I'm doing, but it's happening.
It's leading you somewhere. That is your compass, because you're making this choice.
Yeah. Well, this has been so invaluable to me. I am forever grateful that you came over to my little studio
Thank
today.
you for having me.
No, really, I mean, so many quotables, so many nuggets. I'm going to have so much fun writing the Substack for this and just noodling over everything that you said, because you had such amazing advice and learnings for us all, no matter where you are at in your life or your career.
Thank you for being you, and you are such an important part of my community, really.
Me
I mean
too.
That. Thank you.
You mean so much to me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in, gamers, to Is a Game podcast. Of course, subscribe to isagame.substack.com for bonus and exclusive content. We're seriously doing a lot of fun things over there in between episodes. And also, follow Is a Game Podcast on Instagram and TikTok.